Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Rapid Done right here on Rapid Television. And of course, right now it is time for the big conversation. My name is Victor. Okay.
My name is Martha Alu. Good morning and welcome to the Big Conversation.
And of course, on the big conversation today, we are going to be looking at the Nigeria security landscape, which has remained one of the country's biggest challenges. Now, while the military and other security agencies continue to record tactical victories against terrorists, bandits, and kidnappers, attacks continue in several parts of the country. In just the past few days, at least 20 people were killed in Boko's Plateau State following another armed attack on a community. In Zamfara State, at least 15 people were reportedly killed in another attack on a farming community, highlighting the continued insecurity in the Northwest. The National Assembly also has taken a major step by approving constitutional amendments to allow the creation of state police, one of Nigeria's most debated security reforms, and the proposal now awaits approval by at least two-thirds of the state houses of assembly before it can become law. Well, against this backdrop, Nigerians continue to ask one question. Are we winning the war against insecurity, or are criminal groups simply changing tactics? Well, to join us on the conversation this morning, we have Prince Kevin Fineface, a security consultant, who's going to be joining us to dissect this conversation. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Victor. It's a pleasure meeting you again.
It's good to have you join us today.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Well, the United Nations has repeatedly described Nigeria's insecurity as one of the continent's most complex crises. And recently there was an analysis by ACLED which shows that mass kidnappings are no longer confined to the northern region of Nigeria, but it has increasingly spread into other parts of the country, Nigeria. Now, looking at our security architecture, from say 4 or 5 years ago, are we really winning the war against insecurity, or are we just struggling around it?
I think first I need to be able to change the narrative in the sense that what we have currently as insecurity is not insecurity in the context of security.
Okay.
It is basically a going concern. Because if we look at the whole valuation of insecurity that we have today, it's a business that's going on with the kidnapping, the business that's going on with all types of insecurity you can look at. Is it banditry, we call it? Banditry is not necessarily banditry. It is only but an appellation given by the press to reduce the effect of the type of terrorism that's taking place in that region, or that the type of wanton killings and economic sabotage that is going on. The build-up of what we now call banditry as a result of illegal mining, or what we say that snap mining, and different groups forming to be able to want to have supremacy bases. Today, we hear that Dubai happened to carry one of the largest, gold from Nigeria, but not even recorded by the federal government. So if you look at it from that perspective, then we want to tell ourselves one truth, that indeed, we're actually not winning the war in terms of insecurity as expected, but are we also getting to see the growing increase in more people getting involved in the type of insecurity that we look at today as regards kidnapping and the rest, and the other factors.
Right. Well, still looking at some of the victories that the government has also mentioned, what did you say they're being tactical, at least to an extent?
Well, to some extent, there's no doubt about the capability of our Nigerian security agencies, be it the military, the JSS, police, and all that. There's no doubt about their capacity. What has always been the issue is the political will for some of these things to be done effectively so. Now, here's the thing. The military has shown some inroad. Anytime there's always been some form of embarrassment to the federal government, which is where we saw the killing of the retired general, Rabe. As a result of that, what happens? We saw the military went on the onslaught, had some successes, or they dislodged and all of those things. Do we have to wait for that to take place? So why? Well, I listened to Dati when he said when his nephew was kidnapped, in one of those times they were going to pay ransom. They got to a checkpoint and the security officers they directed them to where the people were. They missed their way and they asked, no, it's not this way you need to go to. So they said there's a whole valuation of connivance taking place. So if you look at it from that perspective, you won't say they're winning, but we can actually stop all of this thing if we really want to. If the president really wants to show political will, then there is a possibility for this to actually be reduced. Of course, we cannot get 100% security, but there will be minimal insecurity that will not be that, visible. I mean, if you go to places like Norway, for an instance, there's crime, but you don't even hear about that. Very minimal. New Zealand, very minimal. I've got to places like America, there's high crime, everyday killings in the hundreds, but we don't hear about them. Reportage, comes in. How do we look at it from national security perspective to get it to doing the right things? How well equipped are we? If there's crime that takes place in the US, it's always very easy for them to nip it. Why? Because the architecture is prepared to do that. Do we have something? Do we have the right data to cover with what we need to do? We don't really have the right data because of certain interests and sentiments that borders on ethnic and religious, lines. So if we factor those things, we can give kudos to the military or to the security agencies, but that there's a possibility that they can do much more than what is going on now. Why are they not doing it? Is what we should be asking those questions.
All right.
All right. You made mention of being able to collect Nigeria's data. I don't know if you've had hands on the new act that was signed. It was a NIMSI Act.
The NIMSI Act.
Yes, that was now signed by the president. Now, I want to ask you, based on what you have said, does this in any way, do you think it would help solve the security situation?
Yeah, of course, to a very large extent with the new NIMSI Act. So we have a unified identity. And this is the first time. I think it's not something like it's new. I know back then, President Obasanjo wanted to implement this, but he had some bottleneck because of ethnic and religious lines, and it was somewhere aborted. They had the case about the Minister of Interior, who was also in prison as a result of that. Corruption came and all of stuff like. So if we have this, yes, what it is, apart from the economic benefit that it comes with, because what it simply means is that every money you have, the government will know how much you have and tax you on that. But there's also the security angle. It simply means that it will be not easy to have footprints that can be easily traced, tracked down, and taken care of. So you cannot have any transaction being done in Nigeria without you having your biometrics, properly taken. So you see that if crime is committed, it will reduce the timeline with which you can unravel these things. Because you can go back to tracing. If they implement this, they put in biometric CCTVs at the strategic positions. The fear now is that if we get to do this, it becomes we are more like a police state. As citizens, you will not have the freedom to be you as citizen, because
how do you mean?
Yeah, because once your information is taken, if you go to China, for instance, they can disable you from making any purchases if you make some mistakes in China. Once they do that, you can't even do any transaction. So if you go to Dubai, for instance, if you have any traffic violations, after a period, you can't even drive. Because the system picks you. Once you get into your car, the camera sees that you have defaulted, you're not supposed to drive, and the police picks you up. So that's another downside to it. But it's also
that's a downside. Is
Yeah,
that because we need some orderliness?
Exactly.
The freedom is something that we're given. The freedom to choose. Even our Creator made it easier for us. I said before, life and death, but choose life. You're given that capacity. It's an invention created by God that man is not supposed to take away from you. But because we live in a society where you want to be able to have some kind of law and order, there's some need to put some measures in order to forestall, to inhibit, to prevent. But there's also the limit to which you can do that, to the degree to which you don't deny the individual their full rights, based on our constitutional provisions.
Do you see a denial of right with this?
No, it will be. It will be because Nigerians elite have not necessarily obeyed the law. They've always used the law against the people. So if you have things like that, the opponents will suffer greatly. We saw what happened in Kaduna a few years ago when the former governor, who is currently having issues, snooping on people's privacies and all of that. Even mentioned recently that he was able to have access to the NSS, phone. That tells you what happens if the states have such kind of capacity.
But that is illegal.
It's illegal.
So right now it's on trial for that.
Even with the state, it's illegal until the courts give such kind of rights. Even with the state, but the state does it.
So do you think this was a political move? I'm sorry, we are moving away from that.
NMIC?
Yes.
No, it's not a political move. I think it's also because the president has also seen that over years, and if you look at advanced societies, unified identity is key in terms of economic planning, in terms of social development, in terms of security. It's very key. We can't roll away from that. We tried something during the last administration with Patami and Co, where we're all forced to go and get our NIN and all of that. A lot of people, and so SIM cards we are debarred from making any calls and stuff like that. Guess what happens? It was abused. As we speak, we do not have authentic data as a country. We don't even know how many we are. There are projections of about 250, 220, or 80. Take a sampling of your tele density, your active telephone lines.
Yeah.
Currently, we have about 200 and something million, about 205 thereabout million active telephone lines. Some persons have 2 or 3, like I have 3 phones, SIM cards, right? And if you do an average, you will get to know how many truly we are. If you want to, have that clearly defined, go to your biometric verification numbers with the banks, right? If you go to the banks, you will see that we have about 80 to 100 million, bank depositors.
Yeah.
If you go to INEC, you have about 90 plus million of registered voters. If we simplify all of this data, then you get to begin to understand how many true we are. But do we have that unified? That's where NMIC comes in. NIMC comes into play to see that we can unify this data. How many of the populace is properly served digitally? The person who sells like around the street, not the one that Ramsey had advised us to do. The ones who sells corn on the street, are they really bankable? Are they banked? So because it is true that you can be able to get some kind of data. So if we can mine all those data, then we can have an authentic data with which we can say, yeah, this is who we truly are. And I know how to plan economically to say, if we have 200 million people, how do we prepare for the next 4 years, 5 years of those who will be in university? When they finish, what kind of job will they do? How will they service the economy and all of that? Okay. And then we can begin. But now we don't have accurate data as we speak.
All right. Now in Nigeria, we have threats basically coming from every geopolitical zone. In the northeast, we have banditry. In the northwest, we have separatist tension. In the southeast, we have oil theft. In the Niger Delta. Which of these concerns
you? Didn't put southwest.
Southwest.
Okay. Now, what about south-south?
South-south, yeah.
Niger Delta.
Niger Delta. Okay. So, what is the question?
The question is, we have all of these threats coming from all these geopolitical zones. Which is more concerning to you right now? I know all of it should be concerning, but which is more concerning to you right now? And how can the average Nigerian protect themselves from all of this?
The most concerning issue is the going concern of insecurity, which comes on kidnapping. It's a major business. It is something that can cause big trauma to an individual. Being kidnapped, being meant to go through what these kids and their principal and teachers are going through in Oyo. It's something that everybody is a victim. The parents, the family members, the neighbors, and the victims themselves are all victims, And so you look at it from that way, it's disheartening. It's troubling. Oil theft, you can say, okay, it's not directly affecting anybody, but if you look at the ecological challenge that it comes with, because if there's spillage, it affects the entire fauna in that environment.
Exactly.
I'm from the river area. Most times you see this oil spillages taking place, sometimes as sabotage, sometimes as leakages as a result of, long use pipes that are corroded in the water, the burst, and the oil companies will say, oh, it was the locals that busted the pipe and will not pay the right compensation and will not do bioremediation to clean up the water to ensure that the fauna can be restored. So you see poor fishing, taking place. People can go to farms. People can go to the river to go fish. So it's all up discerning. If you go to the northeast, for instance, they wanted to in quote Islamization because Boko Haram means Western education is not allowed, but there have been splinter groups. Why are there splinter groups? Because there's a business going on. There's also not denying the fact that there are external factors who were also coming in to try to destabilize. Don't forget, there was a report that was, that put that Nigeria would disintegrate at a certain time. And so those factors are there. But we can also rule out the fact that there are religious interests, but that borders also on ethnic interests, which is part of what you see in the Northwest region, which now we call banditry. It's not banditry. There's actually clear case of genocide taking place in Plateau, Kaduna, and Benue states. We've seen that genocide taking place. Let's give it the name that it is, because when the people in a community are sacked, the name of the community is replaced, renamed, and a new set of people comes to that place. That's pure genocide. That's what is going on in some of those places.
But the government has said that is not genocide. Basically.
Because they want to water it down. It's just being political. That's not. Let's go to Kaduna, for instance. During the time of El Rufai, we saw that so many communities were sacked and renamed. There are refugees in Nigeria. There are IDPs. Why? Why do we have IDPs in Nigeria? That people can't go back to their communities in Borno, in Adamawa, in Benue, in Plateau, and in some part of Nasarawa, just close to you here. There are IDPs, about 3 IDPs in Abuja here.
Yeah.
If you go to Edo, there are IDPs.
Yeah.
And these persons have been there for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, not being able to go back to their ancestral homelands. What do you call that?
You mentioned something in the course of your submission right now,
Yes.
that the insecurity challenges we're facing is a pure business, right? It's a business in this part
Yes.
of the world. And of course, with insecurity experts also say that it's also an increasing organized criminal economy as it is. Now, the question that worries our heart is who funds, who sustains this kind of economy?
The reason you find this thing being so successful is also because of connivance, from the place of those in government.
Okay.
The political elites, the security agencies, some of the agents are also involved. We saw that, the reports have been there. Recently, the police also dismissed some of their people who are also involved in kidnapping. I mean, the report says, so I'm not always said it, right? So if you have such value chain of relationship, then sustainability is the only thing that happens, right? So if you imagine someone is kidnapped and $100 million is paid for ransom, imagine how many people will take the money. I listened to one of the reports, in media, when one of the so-called bandits, said the money don't go to them directly.
Yeah.
They have people who take the money, tell them what to do. Theirs is to, if you listen to Dati, what he said also about Ahmed Dati, that's what he said also, that they have that people that they get commands from.
Okay.
Who bring the weapons, who do all these things, who equip these people to do this thing. So those who spend the money to equip them knows. We listened to what happened in Oyo when they were making some demands, although they came later to refute it through the victims also that, they never said so and all of that, because they realized that, this is going to be being political, so let's change the plan. I don't deny the fact that the initial request that was made was genuine. No, I wouldn't deny that because it's actually part of it. Once, sentiment comes with a situation, then everybody starts to look for a way to want to live, feed from it. And that's part of why we have this issue. So if you focus on our ethnic, religious interests, right, we'll be able to reduce the level of insecurity that we have, because it also stems from that angle. There's a religious interest that is pushing the narrative and sustaining the drive. Unfortunately, like the Frankenstein issue, the same invention is imploding and destroying those who at earlier stages are kind of, tolerated the opponents. When these young men started, this very criminal started their onslaught, if there was this cry to say this was not acceptable from the beginning, it wouldn't have been sustained to this point. But people have now started seeing the opportunity to the extent that people are also self-kidnapping themselves and demanding for ransom.
Yeah, we've seen that.
That's where the business comes in now.
Okay.
We heard of the lady in Delta State who left her home and went with her boyfriend. She was kidnapped. A young lady buried a baby in the ground, and the baby was kidnapped, asking for ransom, only for them to go to dug up the baby, and that's disheartening. So we're already losing our consciences, for the fact that we need to get economic benefit. So that's why it's difficult, to handle it.
And of course, in this part of the world, there are laws against ransom payment, basically. But we'll still hear certain reports on the side that ransom goes on. But based on global experience and also as a security consultant, do you think anti-ransom laws reduce kidnappings, or do they simply make negotiations more secretive?
Implementation is a problem. If your family member is kidnapped and you know the law and there's a ransom provision and this family member is important to you, what will you do?
Okay.
You'll pay. Now, if we all agree to say every life is important, but that we cannot allow for a group of persons or some set of persons to hold out to ransom and say no to it, we're all going to die one day. If we have the mentality of such expectation, then we will not want to, in any form, in any way, compromise to go against the law. We will maintain. But unfortunately, where you get to maintain, nothing happens to the perpetrators. So as such, it becomes a regret for not paying the ransom to release a person. If the law would do what is supposed to be done and ensure that whoever that is involved in the kidnapping is punished accordingly, I subscribe to the death penalty, even though the world will not agree. Because if we're able to do that, it will reduce. I mean, China, for example, because of the type of laws that they have, you don't get to see that increase in the type of criminality we find in that place. Not that there are no crimes in those places. There are, but it's limited because to me, if they get you, there's no mercy. So we reduce the growing rate of such level of criminality that takes place if you apply the death penalty to it. But if a government official's son or family member is involved in the kidnapping, what happens? That's where the problem is.
Okay. As you know, the state police bill has been signed into law, and we're still waiting for, because it has moved to the stage where it needs to go through 36 states. 24 out of 36 approves, and then it moves to the very next stage. As someone who works in the security, do you think that this is the structural fix that people need? And considering also the clause that was made, now the state governors would have the liberty to appoint commissioners in the state. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, you know, we are long overdue for state policing, frankly speaking. I wish we also bring about community policing. I mean, there's a few years ago, I facilitated a training for the Nigerian police on community policing. Because we have failed to become a federal state, we are finding ourselves having the Abuja law covering everywhere, which is the national police affecting us. But there's also the cons in this whole thing. Looking at how petty our politicians are, most of them, there's a tendency for it to be used as states, apparatus, and begin to, affect opponents. And some of these politicians are basically jingoists. That's in the southern part, you find them as jingoists. In the northern parts, they are combined, jingoists and bigots. Okay. Because they always use religion to champion their interests. Let's look at a case, for instance. If we go to Kano, for instance, you have the Isba. That's a type of state police, moral state police, in quote. But there are citizens that are indigenous of the state who are not Muslims that are also governed by the Islamic laws, which is a fundamental in a conflict to their rights based on our constitution. You're not supposed to impose your religion on me because we call ourselves a secular state, but we're not, right? In application. So people in those places, businesses are destroyed because they sell alcohol. Their fundamental right is being breached upon because of the moral police that is there as a state police. If you go to the southeast, for instance, you have the Bubago. Some of those persons have been used politically to wish out opponents, and they've been arbitrary arrests and, extrajudicial killings. If you go to the southwest, you have the Amotekums. We've seen the Fulanis, group claiming that they've been profiled, targeted by the Amotekums because of this elders farmers issue. So we need to be able to have the laws to be such that there is a national body that supervises the states to ensure that in the course of recruitment, not only indigenous of the state are recruited, every resident who has stayed up to 5 to 10 years in the place, it should be eligible to be recruited into the service. So there's a balance. Two, we want to be sure that in deployments, people who are from the state do not remain in the particular place because they are from that place. There should be rotational deployments so as to ensure that you don't get used to and become a warlord in a particular place and decide to intimidate people. I mean, if you go, so there's that revolving thing that takes place. If you put those clauses and rights, not just only appointing, the appointment should not be done by the executive alone. Civil society should be involved in the appointment, and the legislature and judicial, everybody. So you have an open bid, for employment, for appointment. Then the civil society, everybody goes scrutinize so that we know the president or the governor cannot just hire and fire. For you to fire somebody, it requires all of those bodies to come together for you to fire that. Because that brings about job security and will bring about more professionalism in the implementation of their responsibilities. If you president, as it's going on now, the president can hire and fire. Guess what happens? Instead of being loyal to the country, they get loyal to the president. Because the IG is afraid of losing the job. So what they want to do is to please the president. and or any other person who is around the president. Same thing with the defense chiefs and other service chiefs in the country. Their loyalty is supposed to be to the nation alone, and they will now work with the president because the president is only there for a period.
Okay. Hold on, just a follow-up to that. Now, I have a report here that says that the government allocated about 6.57 trillion naira to defense and security in 2025. And one of the biggest budgets in our history, but only 7% of the Army's equipment budget was also actually released. And which means we have an imminent funding crisis in the military as we speak, calling for funding for them, their allowances increased. Do you think that Nigeria has the financial capacity to be able to, employ newer people into the state police, and then we don't have issues of pending allowances?
Well, it's possible that we're sure going to be having that. Why? Because we have, excuse my French, wicked people in positions of authority. And what I've always described as misfit opportunists in positions of authority who do not have any business being there. So rather than allocating the right funds and releasing the funds that are necessary for the things that are expected, they want to do things that will only please their interests, satisfy their own selfish needs. Yeah. We have the resources to take care of the security needs of this country. We have it. We do. But there's always been misalignment and misapplication of these resources. And that's why budget release is a problem. Why is it that it's not only the military, you also have, you had Minister of Health talked about the release that they got, which is a paltry sum of the billion that was mentioned, but only in millions. Billion mentioned, but only millions. As at that time, I think about 30 million was released to a ministry. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge of administration, not a challenge of provision.
Okay.
There's enough. We are a oil producing nation, and if you look at what we produce per day, which has increased to about 1.8, 1.9, million barrels per day. If that is properly allocated and accounted for, there's every likelihood that we're going to have enough money to be able to do things we want to do. Two, we just increased our tax revenue collection recently. I mean, the first quarter that was released, running into trillions. How are we allocating same? How fair is every state? Now, of course, there will be that challenge of state meeting up with employment and sustainability. Why? Because a lot of these states are bereft of what to do. But it will shock you to know there is no state in Nigeria that is not endowed with mineral resources, natural mineral resources, and human capacity. No state in Nigeria, no state that do not have that capacity. Every state you go to Nigeria, there's large deposit, economic deposit of mineral resources. Is it in the south? Is it in the north? Is it in the east or west? You tell me. In the east, you have large coal deposit. From Enugu to Plateau, you have more than 3 trillion tons of coal lined up there, not utilized. If you go to the southwest, you have gold, you have, platinum, you have barite, you have all the mineral resources you can think of, apart from the other agricultural base that you also have. If you go to the south, you have oil, hydrocarbon is there. Which is something that we're not utilizing effectively well. If you go to the north, I mean, you had the Zamfara story. In Niger State, for instance, there is a large deposit of lithium and platinum in Niger State. If you go to Kogi, there are more than 27 mineral resources in Kogi that are not utilized effectively. I was in Kogi a few months back, to provide enterprise security solution for a client. And to my shock, in one community, we fetch sand and put on water, we saw gold. So you tell me that we're lacking? No, it is basically administrative issue because we have people who have no business being there.
Right.
Once we get that right, we have the resources to take care of this. But what does it take to... Governance is the most easiest thing to do, but difficult to start. And so employing people in the right places or getting them into the state security, for instance, this state police thing now, will not be a difficult task to do, but it is because of the sentiments that bedevils implementation that oftentimes affect these things that will affect us. Are they going to do proper profiling before employment? Today we are bedeviled with a lot of criminals in the security architecture. People who have no business because their godfather is a politician who is occupying a key position. So allocations are done and it's okay, you come and go and join them without proper profiling. So if we do the right profiling in the state policing, for instance, then we have the right people. Then the citizens can pay for value. Today, we pay so much money for security privately. You know, we get your armed guard to follow you to travel. You pay. You have your guards, armed guard to guide your neighborhood. You pay. You pay for other security measures, $60. So we are basically providing these things.
So it's more personal investment
So
to the individual.
If government makes the right choices, people will pay the right amount to sustain it.
Let's talk about interagency coordination, basically, because we've seen that many analysts have actually argued that interagency coordination is a major weakness. Now, from your experience as well, how effective is this interagency collaboration between the armed forces, the DSS, the MPF, basically? How effective has it been from you?
There's something I call, petty, infused syndrome, which amongst these agencies. Why is it so? The military believes that they are superior to other agencies. And so there's conflict arises. I mean, we saw where our ability went to road safety and beat up the people.
Yeah.
We saw where our police were beaten also, or police beating civil defense, trying to want to be superior to the other while you're all working for the same country. Why is it so? It's a sentiment that bedevils us based on an ethnic religious sentiment. Because the politicians oftentimes use these fault lines to divide and rule. So it's actually gotten into the fabric of the security agencies. And so it's a challenge that we must continually talk about so as to bring awareness, education, enlightenment, and acceptance so that they can work together. If the DSS sends in an intelligence report to the governor, for instance, and it falls into the hands of the Nigerian police for implementation, there's a tendency for them to look at you and say, they have started again. We saw what happened with the train bombing, Cardinal train bombing that took place. There was an intelligence report that was sent in. It was not implemented. Why? Because of the sentiments. That's personal, if you syndrome that you have. I think it's inferiority complex on the part of those who are there. So if we're able to get them to work together, we'll have this success in containing these threats as they emanate. But how do we get them to work together? It starts from the top. I think one of the people who had the privilege of leading this country, caused this issue when Babangida, disintegrated the NSO and formed the DSS, the NIA, and the GIA. It created this rivalry because everybody now wants to impress the president. Because and that also comes to the place of employment. Because the president can hire and fire, everyone who gets there wants to impress the president instead of the nation. If we're able to get the recruitment, process right, we'll see that these things will reduce. Because if professionals get into a place, they speak professionally. They find ways to collaborate. They find ways to want to integrate intelligence and see. Let's use the simple language. Guy, what do you have in your brain? What are you saying? So they watch one another's back and ensure that we have the right sources we need to have. But everyone wants to impress. I want to be the one that have the right information or meet the president. Okay, I got intelligence. Sometimes also. When intelligence is seen or one of these agencies have intelligence, they don't want to tell the other agency. They want them to fail so that they will be seen as not doing well. And they now come to do to clean up the jobs as those are. This has happened.
All right.
It's like a family where you have kids who the fathers tend to want to love one person more. Others can gang up.
All right.
Okay, I see that an Afro barometer survey found that about 68% of Nigerians believe that security forces handle security matters poorly. In fact, in the first 41 days of 2026, we saw that about 1,091 lives have already been lost. And then we have elections, 2027 general elections, just by the corner. Now, what is the specific security risk that INEC and other political parties are not adequately preparing for?
That's a big one. Now, here's the thing. Every election cycle build-up comes with its own type of insecurity. The threats for political parties or politicians to want to be the candidate of the political parties. We've seen in Osun State a lot of political killings taking place. Why? Is it that the state has always been insecure all along? No, it's a political interest. It's like sugar being exposed and it attracts ants. Why is it so? It's the recruitment process. So it's a type of threat that need to be looked into. What are we doing to demonetize or reduce the incentive to political offices so as not to increase? Because see, the funnel is narrow. The tip of the funnel is narrow. The base, the top is wide. So what happens is that you have more people vying for this small positions, and they are doing everything possible to want to be there. As a result of that, that increases our insecurity, our political killings taking place. You also find that some of these security agencies, because of poor remuneration and welfare system, compromises, in the duty of their jobs, and they either one way or the other become agents of these mishaps. We've seen a situation where in Rivers State, the police were helping to cut away with ballot boxes, beating people, all of those things, because the politician has paid money for that to take place. So going to your question, it is a threat that we all as a country, we need to look into and be talking about. Because see, the more we talk about these things, the more the authorities tend to do something to reduce its effectiveness and all of that. So if we bring it up to the front burner, then there will be ways with which we can actually address this thing. Then the citizens need to be well empowered and educated to understand what they need to do. Today, security is your sole responsibility. In fact, the law gives you the right. Self-preservation is your right. It's a fundamental right. So whatever you need to do to survive, you do it within the confines of the law. It's important. Know where you're going to, know what time you're going to, know who you're relating with. I understand, say something, but don't say something just anyhow to anybody. Say something in the most anonymous form so as you're protected, because we've seen situations where you report to the police and somewhere they tell the individual, this person came and said this to us and all of those things. And so we can look at it. Where are those who are the merchants of insecurity? Let's find them and take them out of the business. Because the merchants are the ones who continue to sustain the business and making it really difficult for security of the people to be experienced. So we find the merchants and reduce their interest so as to be able to ensure that we have better security as a country. And we'll not be like election or no election, we know we have security.
Now, if you look at it, our border as well, we have about 4,000 kilometers of land borders with the neighboring countries. Now, from your perspective as well, how much of Nigeria's insecurity is linked to porous borders?
Well, I think about 40 to 45 percent, in the sense that if you look at the Northeast, for instance, we've had this influx. We had also the politicians, Baraje mentioned the fact they imported people to the country, the build-up of 2015 election, right? They brought in people in case Jonathan refused to, they believed they were going to win, and so that happens. They brought in mercenaries. We also listened to RFI mention that. And we also now have current government stating that because of the crisis in Libya, the arms, proliferation is taking place. You also have the Sahel region having their own crisis, so they're moving in and out of the country. Al-Qaeda, ISIS are doing the same thing. From Syria, the chain of command moves through to Nigeria. So because the borders are actually porous. Why are they porous? They are porous because of ethnic religious sentiments. There's every way to protect and keep our borders secured. But don't block this place. There are people. So people could just walk over to the other side. Besides that, borders are actually an imagination of the colonial masters.
Imagination?
Yes, because it was a result of the Berlin conference in 1885, and where Africa was balkanized in the way it was balkanized. So we never really had borders as Africans before. But when the Europeans came in, they started creating borders, dividing the land, and said, this is my own place. So that's why you see somebody from Maradi is also has a relation in Daura in Nigeria, almost speaking the same languages and all of that. People migrate, we move. That's why we're humans. We're nomads, right? And so we settle in places where we feel comfortable, and sometimes we migrate for economic reasons. Sometimes as a result of infighting, family infighting. We've seen, if you read the story of the Oduduwas, it's there, So if that was the case, what are we doing now? So today we are in a modern society, we need to be able to have the right borders. Why are we not properly secured? Why are our borders that porous? You have arms being pushed in from Benin Republic. If you go to Kwara, if you go to Lagos, if you go to Oyo, these are border states to, the neighboring countries. If you go to Adamawa, if you go to Borno, these are border states. If you go to Cross River, border states, right? So what are we doing? Why is it not that easy for arms to come in through the south in the way that it's coming in from the north or the southwest or from you know, the northeast, thereabouts, or the south and the Cross River region?
Now,
Why do we have that?
Looking at all of these concerns, that also brings up another question to mind. How then can we stay safe in this era of kidnapping? Seeing, of course, that you've mentioned all of this porousness that we have in our border. How can we stay safe?
First thing first is your intuition. I mean, one of the things that actually saved me a few years ago when I had armed robbery attack on the streets of Abuja, just by Mabushi. I had the intuition not to stop when I stopped, but I felt, okay, it was a public place, it was safe, but I was stabbed 4 places, left to die, you know, and survived it. So intuition, it's key. It's the internal compass given to us by our creator to know when things are going to go wrong. Second thing is to, whatever way you can protect yourself, please do. If you need to have strong gun, even the law will not allow you to carry that, but have what you can, because if the state has failed to protect you, then it's your responsibility to protect yourself. You do not have any excuse to want to wait for the state to protect you. Do something first to protect yourself.
Legally?
Do something to protect yourself. I don't want to know if it's legal or illegal. Do something to protect yourself, in as much as you're not infringing on another person's rights. Then the other factor we also need to look at is that we need to begin to find ways to incentivize criminality. Why do we have to celebrate people who can't show proof of how they make their money? Why do we celebrate material things? Somebody you know, your neighbor, has been there with you for these years. He has not shown any interest of doing any benefit. Suddenly he comes with one GLK or it comes with AMG, and you're celebrating. He buys you a drink and you're happy. You didn't ask, how did you get the money? You know, I grew up in a home where my father they'll beat the hell out of you if you come with other person's pencil. Not to talk about other clothes to wear, you know, or things. I mean, it's still stuck in my head many years after. Even though he has passed, I see his voice in my head. So we need to see that our family values, you know, come back on board, and show that kids get to know the basic things that are necessary, and also reduce how we praise material things. Then as a society, that's what I call the good neighborliness. You want to be sure who are your neighbors on the left and the right. If I move into a new place, I take drinks to my neighbors on the left and the right and opposite me to say, I just moved in here, this is where I am, introduce myself, and get to know, look in between and see what I'm seeing, to know if I will see something that can give me something. And I monitor my neighbors to be sure that I'm not leaving one criminal that one day, you know, set up kidnapping and just pick me up, you know. I mean, these things happen. And we also need to be sure those we employ as security guards truly have the capacity, are properly profiled. I mean, 2 years ago, I was also robbed, you know, where I live in the estates. I think connivance with the security. As soon as I traveled out of the country, they knew that I traveled and they came in and succeeded. Luckily, my son was not hurt. So we need to do all of those things. Then continue to report to the authorities, either the security agencies, even if they won't do anything.
But
filing every incident that takes place, just don't tell to the filing.
All right. So my final question to you, if you had the ear of the president and he asks you what can be done to significantly improve the security situation in our country, what are going to be your top 3 reforms as the security comes up?
First thing first, declare state of emergency in that area. On security, state of emergency on security. So you take away the bottlenecks, the bureaucratic bottlenecks, and ensure the right people are there. Second thing is to ensure that those who are there, because since they are afraid to do this, what they need to do, you move them to the side, let them go to the training schools and get the young ones who can do the job to do the job, and give them a timeline, you know, based on the baseline structure that you're going to put in place. The third thing you want to do is to ensure that the remuneration and welfare system improves. So I've suggested every security agent should be paid the salary of a councillor in the local government, minimum. Okay. Yes, because you see, you cannot be paying politicians so high, and you pay those who are responsible for maintaining law and order, protecting the territorial integrity of this country so low, and expect that they will do their job. The donkey has right to eat from the foliage that comes up. So, but hey, if you have an hunting dog, you don't give the dog a piece of the hunted meat. After a while, you won't be smelling the right game for you. Okay. Yeah.
Interesting.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Prince Fineface, for your time with us on the program this morning. We do appreciate you. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure, anytime.
And of course, we've been talking about the Nigerian security crisis, what is really going on here in our country, Nigeria. And of course, our guest has given us, lots of answers to the questions that we have to ask regarding the security situation in our country. But one thing stands out: if you do see something, please ensure that you say something to make sure that you're safe within your own community. Well, Martha?
Yes, I'll just take initiative from what our guest also said and what you have said. Security is not just a person's business. It is everyone's business. And now, sadly, we have moved from the era of communal living as we used to in the past, where it becomes super easy to spot out something that is pretty much odd within an environment. But these days, everyone keeps to themselves. So it's literally so hard for you to find out when there's something irregular about a person, because you want to mind your business and you don't want to infringe on another person's privacy or another person's rights. But we must also learn to be very sensitive in our environment, so that when there's something that is unusual, we can report. And it is safer to report and find out it is actually nothing than actually assuming that it is nothing and then finding out that it is actually something that you would have paid attention to. And then for the government, it's important that they are on their toes regarding the security situation here in Nigeria. Yes, the state policing is great. The bill is being passed. We're waiting for other approvals before it gets to the final stage. But there are other bottlenecks that needs to be paid attention to, which is funding. If we don't fund it again, we will have the exact same situation we have with the Nigerian police force right now. So it's important that we nip it in the bud now while we are trying to build a framework for it before we approve, and then it becomes too late to start addressing and readjusting the act again.
Okay, that being said, this is where we'll draw the curtain on today's edition of the Rapid Down. Do remember that you can follow us on all our social media pages across our platforms at Rapid TV. And of course, you can get to watch and rewatch this particular episode on YouTube, which is at Official Rapid TV. And wherever you are in the world, you can watch us live on our website, www.arabianradiotv.com. And also to remind you, we are on Free TV. So download the app and search for Rapid Television, and we're going to be there to keep you updated on the things going on in our country and around the world. My name is Victor. Okay.
My name is Martha Alu. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.